Hello and welcome to the Action Network podcast, UFC betting preview. I'm Sean Zerillo, joined today by Billy Ward to help you break down the fights on this weekend's card, give you our best bets, favorite underdogs, top props, and more. And if you'd like to tell some of the bets that we discuss on today's show, you can find the quick slip links both in the podcast and the video description, or visit actionnetwork.com/betnow. Recording a little bit earlier this week, Thursday night instead of Friday morning. The card that we're mostly going to discuss here starts on Saturday in Shanghai at 3 a.m. Eastern time. So we wanted to get this up early for that reason. But also, there's a Road to UFC card on Friday morning beginning at 6 a.m. Eastern time that finishes off with two UFC bouts, which we'll discuss later in this episode, in addition to some bets that Billy likes on the Road to UFC card individually. We're going to get to that, though, at the end of the show. If you're watching on YouTube, those fights probably will have started by the time that you're seeing this. They may not have started yet. Like the fights later in the card may not have started yet by the time you're getting to it. But if you're on the podcast, you can find those at the end of the show for Friday. But in terms of Saturday's card, we're going to take this show in typical fashion. 12-fight card from Shanghai. Early start time, as I said, 3 a.m. Eastern time. So make sure to get those bets in early. Would have loved to have woken up late, but I actually show value up and down this card. Main event actually is the one fight I might be passing on between Mingyang Zhang at minus 340 and Johnny Walker at plus 270. Light heavyweight bout that is minus 1600 or higher to end inside the distance. Plus 820 to go to a decision. The under 1.5 rounds is juiced all the way up near minus 300. Johnny Walker actually had a 5-round main event with Thiago Santos. That was minus 850 to end inside the distance, and he decided to come out like a distance kickboxer. It's the most patient he's ever fought in his career. They won a very tepid 25 minutes, and Johnny Walker won a low-volume decision. But he has been knocked out 3 times since that fight. He's been knocked out 4 times in the UFC and 6 times in his career, including that knockout regionally where he was essentially knocked out 4 times in the span of 30 seconds. Zhang, though, not durable necessarily either. He was knocked out twice regionally. He's been submitted regionally. He got wobbled by Brinson Ribeiro in his fight, and he even came into the UFC as a plus 450 underdog, beating Tuco Tokos on Road to UFC. So Zhang was never that highly rated by the market. We really haven't seen him in many extended fights. Walker is the taller and longer athlete, 4 inches taller, 7-inch reach advantage. This fight extends. I think Johnny Walker is worth considering as a live bet after round 1, certainly after round 2. I think he probably has better 25-minute cardio, is obviously more tested across 25 minutes. But I think if in any extended fight, Walker may be a more competent fighter as well. The other 2 ways to bet this that I think are viable, Zhang KO1, minus 118. There's probably the squarest bet of the week, but I think it's certainly worth betting into considering Walker's chin at this point of his career. I project value on Zhang by KO. I think if it comes early. The other angle, and I think the way Johnny Walker can win this fight, and I'd imagine you might agree with this, Billy, Walker by sub at 12-1. The way he scrambled with Ion Cutelaba was very surprising and very impressive. We don't see Johnny Walker scramble much, but he does have a relatively well-rounded skill set. I mean, his brother Walter Walker is certainly a grappler, half-brother. I think Walker, if he grapples here, he could potentially find a submission. So Walker sub 12-1, Zhang KO1, Walker live, I think my favorite way to play this fight. So Billy, any bets that you actually ended up picking for this one? And then what do you think about the live angle on Walker?
Yeah, as of now, at least it's a pass for me. I think this is kind of a dog or pass spot. We don't know that Mingyang Zhang is actually good just because of the matchups they've given him. Like, I believe it was Ozzy Diaz was his first official UFC fight. That guy's 0-something. Oh, no, it was Ribeiro first and then Ozzy Diaz. Ozzy Diaz is like 0-3 in the UFC across 2 stints, or 0-1 that can... Oh, no, he did get a win. That's right. He beat Jordan Santos. Regardless, not a high-level opponent. And then, the corpse of Anthony Smith doesn't really count at that point in his career either. Johnny Walker can be good if he doesn't just explode when you look at him too hard. But that's usually what happens later in his career. I'm glad you mentioned his brother. I was about to say, like, what if he actually learned a heel hook from Walter and, gets knocked down and then starts rolling for legs? It could happen. Love the sub angle. We'll probably have like a 0.1 unit on that just for fun. But
Yeah.
mostly going to pass. I think if you have to take a money line side, it's got to be Walker at these odds. He's fought like almost exclusively championship level guys for a while now. You know, 2 of his last 3 fights were against Magomed and Ankalaev. This is a huge step down for him, but he might just be totally physically broken. So hard one to bet.
Yeah, very difficult fight to bet. Normally, I always find at least one way I want to bet on these fights. But the fight that is minus 290 to the under 1.5, there's only so much that you can do with it. In terms of pure value, I think Walker sub is the way to go. Like Billy said, I'll probably put, a 20th of a unit, a 10th of a unit on it just for kicks, just to have something on the main event. And I do think there is legitimate value on that prop. Walker live, though, probably my favorite way to play it. If I'm picking the fight straight, if you gave me a free bet at even odds on every single thing on the board, it's Zhang KO1.
Right.
That is my pick for the fight. All of that said,
Zhang knockout is
fight
minus 280. Like just him doing the knockout. I would say Zhang knockout is minus 280, which is crazy for a single method of victory prop, and like not that far off his money line too. So yeah, just some wild lines.
Yeah, I make it minus 260. I saw a minus 240 out there. So, if you want to same game parlay Zhang and under 1.5 and knockout, you could probably get, I don't know, minus 150 instead of laying minus 240. But then you're taking away the rest of the fight and the knockout potential there. There's really just no good way to bet on this fight is the long and short of it. I think both of us, though, have much more conviction on our fight of the night in the co-main event, a 5-round main event or co-main event between Aljamain Sterling and Brian Ortega. This is the third fight for Aljo at 145. You'll have this breakdown up on actionnetwork.com. So I'm going to turn it over to you, especially because I really like Aljo as a parlay piece this weekend. I kind of like his decision prop, but in a 5-round fight, I feel like Ortega maybe breaks somewhere down the stretch. You and I were discussing this earlier in the week, and I'm sitting there wondering how to play this fight, without laying minus 300. And sure enough, Billy drops the best thought I've had all week into the sheet. So Billy, take it away with your bet on this fight, and I'll fill in the gaps where I think you missed.
Yeah, I agree with you. Obviously, we talked about it, so we kind of came to this collectively. But if this were a 3-round fight, Aljamain Sterling by decision, great odds. We've just seen so many bad signs from Ortega between the injury in cage. He got dropped by Diego Lopez in his last fight. Miraculous recovery because Lopez tried to grapple with him and not strike from the top. I think Aljamain has the fight IQ where if he does manage to hurt him, he's going to lay on the damage and not try to play a submission game against Brian Ortega. I think Diego Lopez even came out and said at one point that he wanted to submit him like to prove a point because that's the kind of guy Diego Lopez is. Sterling doesn't care about that. He's just going to try to win the fight. And the shortest path to that, if he hurts him, is to keep striking. But, Aljamain Sterling, not a great finisher. And from a technical standpoint, what I noticed is Ortega has really good submissions, but he has really good submissions off his back. Their guillotines and triangles are his 2 best moves. Both of those you do after you get taken down. Sterling's never been submitted. He's never been submitted in pro grappling. And he's faced not just MMA guys, he's faced strict grapplers who were unable to submit him. I don't think Ortega has much of a shot to submit Sterling here. What I think is going to happen is Brian Ortega is going to accept the takedown. He's going to look for a guillotine, look for a triangle, whatever. That's just going to be a guard pass for Aljamain Sterling, who's going to spend the rest of the round scrambling around on top of him, doing his Funkmaster stuff. If Ortega breaks physically at some point in there, we get a finish. If he doesn't, pretty dominant win for Sterling on the judges' scorecards, which is why I'm going Aljamain Sterling minus 5.5. This one's only minus 110. We talked about it, a few months ago that it seemed like they were juicing those better because it is easier to cover the 5.5 in a 5-round fight than it is to cover the 3.5 in a 3-round fight. This just feels like a miss to me. I mean, if you're going to say he's a minus 310 favorite, he's only got to win. He can drop a round and still cover the point spread in a 5-round fight, unlike the 3.5 in a 3-round fight. I don't see him dropping more than 1 because if he tries to strike with Ortega and it doesn't work, the next round he's shooting right away and not bothering with that. Ortega does not have the wrestling to stop that, nor does he really have a desire to stop takedowns. So pretty sure he covers that. Wasn't sure if I wanted to play the finish or play the decision, but when we're getting effectively even money on him to win at least 4 rounds, or even 4 rounds on 1 scorecard or 2 scorecards, 3 rounds on another, something like that, there's just a lot of outs for Aljo here, so that's how I'm playing it.
This is my favorite point spread bet in a while. I absolutely love this. I'm pretty limited in terms of my ability to bet at the book that offers them. I will find a way to get more money down where it's available. But yeah, I really like this point spread for Aldo. He's just such a better minute winner in this fight. Outlands opponents at distance by 2.5 strikes per minute. Ortega gets outlanded by 2.7 strikes per minute. And that's throw away the Max Holloway fight from that sample too. He's still getting outlanded by more than 2 strikes per minute at distance. On the ground, or the takedown averages, Aljo averaging about 5 per 5 minute at distance, nearly 6. Ortega 1.7. Grappling control rate 64% for Aljo, 48% for Ortega. So Aljo just the better control grappler, the better minute winner on the feet. I think he chips away ultimately. And what really concerns me about the decision prop is in terms of Ortega's recent the injury in the cage. I was at his fight against Yair Rodriguez where he dislocated his shoulder, on bottom trying to set something up. He sprained both of his ankles walking to the cage against Yair the second time they fought. He sprained it like jumping up and down during the intros, rolled it, and still ended up winning the fight. But yeah, Yair is just pretty much broken, or Ortega pretty much broken at this point of his career physically. I would expect Aljo to dominate minutes, and I think he can potentially win via injury TKO or some sort of just like top control, like scramble, something goes weird, and he catches Ortega in a scramble. But the things to be mindful of here and the reasons why you could justify betting Ortega by submission, I think there's 8-1, 9-1. If you do like the Ortega side, Aljo, when he goes for takedowns, does stick his head exactly where a fighter would lock up a guillotine from. That is the blast doubles that he hits. That's exactly where he puts his head. And also, if he's going to stay on top, he needs to be mindful of that triangle coming over if he's going to sit and guard. So one of the best grapplers in the sport. I don't expect him to do something dumb and make a fight IQ mistake. But if you're going to bet Ortega, I think there is value justifiably on his sub prop. Otherwise, it is Aljo point spread for me and for Billy as well. Before we get to our favorite underdogs on the card, just want to remind everybody that football season is here and we've got some huge improvements and updates coming to the award-winning Action Network app, which we're very excited to discuss in the weeks ahead. But to get the most out of the app, just need to be an Action Pro subscriber. It's only with Action Pro you get real-time pick alerts from me and the entire Action Network team of experts. Plus, you can get our pro projections, powered by Sean Kerner and our predictive analytics team, plus a ton of other benefits. And right now at Action Network Podcast, listeners can save $20 off the annual price of Action Pro. Just go to actionnetwork.com/pro and use promo code POD20. That's actionnetwork.com/pro and use code POD20 for $20 off the price of Action Pro. Let's move to our favorite underdog section. I'm going to start with your fight because I'm going to need a minute to clear the air before we get to mine. Let's go with a fight that I like actually quite a bit this weekend, and technically we'd be head-to-head here if I get a little bit of a better number on Sumaderji. So people, go ahead and bet Kevin Borjas. Billy, go ahead and bet Borjas as much as you want. I want to see if I can get a better price on Sumaderji on fight day. 2 pretty good nicknames, Tibetan Eagle and the Black Rooster, right? You told me Gallo Negro for Kevin Borjas. So a couple of fun animal nicknames here. Tibetan Eagle, 3 inches taller, 4-inch reach advantage. I think his wrestling has gotten a little better. So, Billy, in terms of the path for Borjas here, do you see him landing more power in the pocket and winning on the feet? Or do you think he mixes in some grappling and mixes the martial arts together and is able to win that way?
Not at all on the grappling. My big breakdown here is that Kevin Borjas is much better when he is not forced to grapple. Sumaderji definitely has gotten better grappling to an extent. He got taken down 6 times by Mitch Raposo in his last fight, which is not a great look. Not a ton of control time, which is encouraging that he was able to get back up. But that was a split decision win over Mitch Raposo, and that would have been the 4th straight loss for Sumaderji if the judges saw it the other way. I'm not saying it was a bad decision, by the way. I think he probably deserved it, but he was a hair's breadth away from 4 straight losses and being cut from the UFC. Kevin Borjas just came back. Big win over Ronaldo Lazy Boy Rodriguez. Dropped him, I believe, in the first round, might have been the second round in there. Very impressive performance. He just struggles when guys force him to worry about the wrestling, and he doesn't have to do that here. But it's mainly a system play for me with the split decision, just one of those things. I had it in my luck ratings. At one point, it was going the other way, where I thought it was going to continue to move closer to even money. It's actually blown out a little bit since I bet it. So I got the worst of the number. I'm helping drive that line value for Sean to get the better number on Sumaderji, but I'm okay with it at plus money. effectively, I think, just going to be a striking match between two guys who can both hit and have both been dropped. So if we're flipping a coin on who falls first, I'm kind of okay with that.
Best of luck to you betting against a Chinese fighter in China. I don't think you're going to get many fair scorecards for the non-hometown fighters this weekend. I think you can lean into the home fighters just a little bit more. I do like Su, though, and the improvements he's made. He actually, I think, is a guy who's getting over knee injuries. He was wearing those like leg sleeves previously. Really struggling in the grappling. The takedown defense, as you said, looked a lot better in his last fight against Raposo. He denied 13 of the 19 attempts. He did get taken down 6 times, but only held down for about 4 minutes in that fight. Now back to a striking fight here. Isn't going to have to worry about getting defensively grappled either. So I think both of us really like the fact that our respective fighter does not have to grapple or worry about it. But Su, 3 inches taller, 4-inch reach advantage. Borja should have the power advantage. So it could be judges weighing volume against power and certainly get the argument for Borjas, but not necessarily in this region of the world. In the Apex, 100%, maybe not here on Saturday. But yeah, if I can get minus 170, I'd be interested in Su. What's your price target that you like Borjas down to?
So I bet him at, I believe, 138 earlier in the week. I'm seeing plus 152 now. I think plus anywhere this side of plus 130. I'm basically viewing this as a coin flip with two guys going to throw hard, see who falls. So if I can get plus 130 on one side of that, I'm happy with it.
My favorite underdog on this card is the biggest underdog on the card. That is Weston Wilson at plus 800 or higher against Yiza. He's the taller man. He's the longer man, 4 inches taller, 2-inch reach advantage. He's a bigger underdog against Yiza than he was against Joe Anderson Brito or Gene Silva, which seems like not something that should happen. Granted, he did lose both of those fights, but then he came back and beat Jarek Kasaragi as a near 3-1 dog. And I bet him in that fight. I thought that line was wrong. I think this line is wrong too, just because Yiza, relatively inexperienced, has a loss in his UFC debut against Gabriel Santos. He came into that fight as a plus 210 dog, went to decision. Wilson has a bad chin, but if Yiza does not finish him, I think this is a very competitive fight. I think there's value on the GTD prop. I think there's value on Wilson by decision, value on Wilson's money line as well. I feel like the market here too, the odds were a little strange in terms of the skew for the knockout and submission splits for Yiza as well. But ultimately, the market's saying Wilson wins this fight 1 out of 10 times. I think it's closer to 2 out of 10 times. The GTD odds are closer to 15%. I think that should be closer to 20%. So either Wilson on the money line or the fight goes to decision at 5-1 or better. You can get 8-1 and 6-1 respectively. Not interested in the over 1.5 at like plus 130. If it gets over 1.5, I think it has a pretty good shot of going all 15 minutes. So Billy, either Wilson money line or fight to go to decision or any other bet on this fight that I should probably just stay away from interest you at all?
No, you mentioned it to me, before we got on the air, and I looked into it a little bit. The thing I really like is Wilson is like just a fairly good fighter with a terrible chin, much in some ways like Johnny Walker in the main event. Yiza is not a big, scary, powerful knockout guy like the Mountain Tiger is. Knockout is his least frequent winning method. He hasn't won a fight by knockout since 2019. And then even on the road to the UFC, didn't drop anyone, didn't really come close to finishing anyone by strikes. It's hard to say that this one should be longer, certainly than, Gene Silva versus Weston Wilson. But even in some ways, it matches the main event in terms of the dynamics here, where one guy is probably more skilled with no chin, but you're getting like 4 times the price that you would be on Johnny Walker. So I'm with you. I talked myself into it for somewhat different reasons than you did. And again, you can't be that wrong on a 10-1 underdog or 9-1 underdog. So why not, throw a couple bucks on there. If you hit it, pays off the rest of your fun.
Yeah, Yiza on road to UFC, 3 decisions, 2 by split. So it's not like he was necessarily finishing lower level competition either. Still needs to prove himself against this level. Not that Weston Wilson necessarily is UFC level, but I think he can give Yiza a competitive fight. Let's move on to our favorite prop. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Billy.
No, I got the one more underdog. My bad. That is a fighter I also hate to bet on, but that is Austin Bang Hubbard at 2-1 or plus 210. I'm saying This is a pretty straightforward one with the split decision dynamics. Did not get to it in my luck ratings. Looking for my notes now and exactly how this shook off. But he's coming off 2 straight close split decision losses, and I believe he can kind of stall / grapple / make it close. I'm feeling less good about it now after you pointed out some of the possible judging dynamics we have on this card, which should, of course, favor the local fighters, Austin Hubbard being not the local fighter. But he's fighting Rongju, who is also coming off a split decision win, a unanimous decision win of his own over Cody Steele. Cody Steele just took a terrible game plan there and didn't really try to grapple him until he was already getting beaten up. Had some success when he did. That was fight of the night. It was fight of the night because Cody Steele, who's a world-class grappler, just slugged it out with him. Before that, he got stopped by Chris Taco Padilla in his UFC debut. Don't think he's that good. I don't think Austin Hubbard is that great either, but I think with the right game plan here, and by learning from the mistakes of Cody Steele, he can do a pretty boring stall here. It's also hugely favored to go to a decision, which is another one of those. We like the underdogs in fights like that. Although, again, I like it less when Sean pointed out that the judging might work against us when betting on the non-Asian fighters on this event.
So I actually like this fight to finish. I make the finish line about plus 150. They're giving you plus 180. I'm probably betting the ITD line, but I prefer Rongju as the finisher if somebody's going to finish the fight. Rongju by KO, I make about plus 350. You can bet plus 460. Would you agree that Rongju is the likelier finisher of the two? Hubbard likelier to win by decision?
Oh, yeah, 100%. I mean, Austin Hubbard is a decision machine, kind of for better or for worse. Got triangle choke by Kurt Hollabaugh, but like both of his fights on The Ultimate Fighter this time around were decisions. A lot of decisions before that. Has some finish wins, pre-UFC in his career, but primarily in the UFC has been a kind of boring, slow the pace down, try to take you down and don't do much with it guy, which is objectively the correct way to fight someone like Rongju.
Let's rip through some fights from a prop perspective before we get to our best bets later on in the show. And then, as I said, we'll finish up with some fights on the Road to UFC card taking place on Friday morning. The Neurology against Crosby fight, welterweight division. Not going to try to pronounce Neurology's first name. Not even going to go there whatsoever. But I think this should be a layup for him. He's 3 inches taller, has a 5-inch reach advantage. He is 11 years younger. And he was supposed to compete on the Road to UFC card. The UFC actually pulled him up for this fight against Crosby in place of Song Kanong, who ended up dropping off the card. Seems like a fairly binary striker versus grappler matchup. What interests me about that is his sub prop is plus 600 and his KO prop is like minus 170. I think favorite by sub. Round 2 plus 420. Round 3, 12-1. All interesting ways of playing him instead of laying minus 430. And then the over 1.5 at plus 150 interests me as well in the event that Crosby is able to keep things more competitive, but he does not have more than 7.5 minutes of gas, hence the late round stabs on the favorite, in addition to the submission prop. Billy, were you able to break this one down and find anything that you liked in this matchup?
Didn't watch any tape on this one. Kind of hard to find any on Naraji coming into this one since he didn't go through the road to the UFC.
Yep.
Not high on Kiefer Crosby, though, so I do like the angles that you have on that. And you're right. I think if we wait a little bit, you can probably just throw Nuarji into a SGP with that over 1.5, because that's probably the way that dynamic works, is it favors him if it does go long.
Yeah, significantly younger. As I said, 11-year age gap between the two. Hence the late round stabs, and then the I think the fact that he's going to grapple is super viable for that sub prop, and the pricing should be far closer to plus 300 for either instead of minus 160 and plus 600. I think they should be much tighter. So definitely going to take a look at that. In addition to the over 1.5, if he subs them early, you still profit. He subs them late, you win both. Mahashat against Gage Young. Mahashat at plus 110. Gage Young moving up to around minus 130. Maha 4 inches taller, only a 1-inch reach advantage. Young lost to Killian Salkeld on Contender Series, then lost 30-27 to Elvin Elder in his debut. I think he has the better chin, less power, maybe a little bit of grappling upside. I kind of lean to this fight to go to decision at minus 135, but I'm not super interested in betting it just because I could see these two throwing down and somebody getting knocked out. Do you have any bets on this fight or any lean at this point?
Nothing on this one. Just wanted to point out Mahishate did knock out Steve Garcia before Garcia's incredible run, and then it's just looked pretty bad since then. His only win was a split decision, so that was kind of weird because the Steve Garcia, theoretically with what we know about Steve Garcia now, that's a super impressive win, but you got to adjust your priors when the guy goes 1-3 with a split decision after that. Again, also not super impressed by Gage Young, so I don't know. Don't have any strong feelings there.
No worries. Yeah, I mean, again, it's a little bit earlier than we put this out. There's always one more data point that I wait for after weigh-ins come out in order to make my final decisions. There's a book that waits to put out all of their prop lines until after weigh-ins, and I kind of use that to weight my projections against one final time before actually putting my money down on a lot of these props. So leaning with we're going with most of our leads here, trying to talk through some of these spots just like 12 hours ahead of where we normally record the show, 16 hours actually. Michel Pereira against Kyle Daukaus, though, this is a fight and a bet that I have conviction and will be playing on Saturday. The last couple, we'll see how I end up structuring those. Pereira and Daukaus. Daukaus coming back to the UFC. He won and defended the CFFC middleweight title a few times. Surprisingly to me, he's the bigger man in this matchup. 2 inches taller, 3-inch reach advantage. Pereira is thicker, stronger, much more powerful. Daukaus has an elite front choke series. He's really good at wrapping up the neck. I mean, his nickname is the Dark Knight, but he can secure the Bravo. Like he has a bunch of different variations he can go with. Can get them standing, can get them on the mat. Pereira, I thought looked like a shell of himself in his last fight against Abus Magomedov. Maybe he had a bad weight cut. Maybe he's declining athletically. But either way, I think he is the much more powerful, dangerous striker in this matchup. Daukaus defends strikes at 42%. Chase Hooper last week, 38%. As I said, I liked Hooper late if he didn't get nuked early. Well, he certainly got nuked early after being relatively competitive in round one. Daukaus, very similar, not in terms of like the pace he's going to put on, but in terms of the striking defense and the vulnerability both to the head and to the body. I think he's actually way less durable than Chase with the same poor striking defense. So Daukaus is super hittable and not that durable. Pereira, I think, could potentially get subbed here. I make the ITD line about minus 300. Market is giving us minus 120 to minus 150. And then Billy and I both like Pereira as the likelier finisher of the two. I make his KO line about even money. You can get plus 165. Billy, you're just taking him inside the distance. What was that number? I believe plus 110. Where do you like that down to?
It was plus 110, but now seeing that the ITD is minus 120, I think that's probably the sharper pick, is just to take. It's not enough of a price difference. Pereira's just a way, 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 way better athlete than Kyle Daukaus. Like Daukaus is a guy who got really good at grappling despite his athletic disadvantages. He's kind of like a tall, lanky, awkward dude. Michel Pereira looks like an NFL player. So just that kind of speed and power differential. They were both born in the same year. They were both born in 1993. So it's hard to say that Pereira is declining physically and Daukaus is not. And they've also both taken some bad losses. So I think this is a good buy low spot on Pereira generally because he lost to Fluffy Hernandez, had some big moments in the first round before he got fluffied. And then Abus Magomedov, another guy who grappled with him, fought a smart fight, kept him at range. That's not stuff that Kyle Daukaus is going to do. He can't force the grappling on Pereira because Pereira is so much faster and stronger. And he kind of relies on people shooting in on him or sticking their neck down to get those submissions, which Pereira doesn't have to do. He might do because he's a crazy person, which is why I like the minus 120, because he might just backflip his way right into a Darce choke somehow. But he should finish this fight like fairly easily with the speed and power against a guy who can't defend strikes and is way slower than him.
What would be, in terms of pricing, what would be your trigger point for betting the ITD as opposed to Pereira ITD? Is it like 30? Is it like even money versus minus 130, minus 140? Like what's the split that you need in order to take the one side versus both?
I was thinking 40 or 50 cents, but it's about how much, finishing equity I would need from the Daukaus side to take it. I put in the Pereira inside the distance before I saw the fight to end ITD is so close. So, I'm kind of working from a backwards anchoring point here. I thought plus 110 on Pereira to get a finish was drastically undervalued. I thought that'd be easily favored, but it makes sense that it's undervalued because we think the inside the distance is also undervalued. I don't think you can really go wrong with either of those there, but the 30 cents there is effectively what, like not even 6% in terms of implied probability. I can't do that math that quick off the top of my
100 and minus 130. Yeah, it's 6.5%. Yep.
Yeah. So like, does Kyle Dawkins have a 6.5% chance of getting a finish? That's about where I'd put it. So I would need a slightly bigger spread, I think, for the ITD to be better.
Yeah, good stuff there. I think the general ITD market definitely closer to minus 150. So make sure to shop around for the best price. And as we said, Billy and I both prefer the Pajera side of it. But if the price is close enough, definitely take the ITD line instead. The ultimate 2025 fantasy football draft kit is here. Sean Kerner and Chris Raybon have rankings, tiers, cheat sheets, and more to help you navigate your fantasy football drafts. New subscribers to Fantasy Labs can use code FLEX20 for $20 off at fantasylabs.com/flex. That's $20 off with code FLEX20 at fantasylabs.com/flex. Also, our Fantasy Flex podcast crew is having a live event later this month. So here's Chris Raybon with some details.
Fantasy Flex listeners, Chris Raybon here. Sean Kerner and I will be in Chicago on August 23rd at Joe's on Weed for a live Fantasy Flex event presented by Yahoo Fantasy. We'll have a few special guests there as well. So you definitely want to check it out. And it's totally free to attend. All you got to do is RSVP to save your spot. And you can find the RSVP link in the description below. We're going to do a live fantasy draft. We're going to have some preseason games going on that we're going to sweat together. So again, find that RSVP link in the description below for more details and save your spot. We'll see you in Chicago, August 23rd, Joe's Bar on Weed Street for the Fantasy Flex live event presented by Yahoo Fantasy.
Thank you, Chris. And with that, we are going to get into Billy's final, or my final prop and Billy's best bet for this card as we transition between sections. Look at Charles Johnson at about plus 170 against Loner Kavanaugh minus 200. You've been high on Kavanaugh since he came into the UFC. I think he fought his way in through Contender Series. He's 8 years younger. He should be the more durable man. He's the better athlete. Seemingly has championship caliber upside in the flyweight division. Should grapple, probably, if he wants to cover his price tag in this matchup. I'm curious your thoughts on that. I would imagine Johnson keeps this much more competitive. He's just allowed to strike this out because he's 3 inches taller, 3 inches longer. I, though, and I think you agree, like the fight to end inside the distance. I think we get a high-paced war as we do in any Charles Johnson fight. I make the ITD line about plus 210. You can get as high as plus 255. The divisional average would be about minus 112. Most of these fights end inside the distance in the flyweight division, and we're getting big plus money on a high-paced fight to do so between arguably two durable fighters. But, Billy, how do you expect Kavanaugh to overcome that reach advantage? As I said, 3-inch gap in both height and reach. Do you like him to finish the fight? I know you like him on the money line, but any prop angles you like as well?
Yeah, I mean, I actually like the dynamic if Charles Johnson chooses to stay and strike from the outside, because Kavanaugh uses a lot of traditional martial arts, long kicks, spinning stuff, lengthy things. And what you need to make any of that work is space and time to set them up. So it makes it really hard if you're the taller fighter to give him that range, because he's going to leap in or spin in or jump in, something that you don't want to happen. And then if you try to come in as the taller fighter, now you're fighting in a close range where Lonnie Kavanaugh's shorter arms actually make it an easier distance to the target for him. The big thing, though, for Kavanaugh that I wrote this up in the Contender Series breakdown I did for him last year and why I've been so high on him, is unlike most traditional martial arts guys, he actually defends himself. You know, we were talking about MVP, Michael Venom Page, before the show, fights the whole time with his hands down and relies on his reflexes to get out of the way. That's great, but it's risky because the first time you get clipped, you're going to pay for it. Kavanaugh, unlike most guys with that style, carries his hands up, bobs his head really well, moves well inside the pocket, and can fight inside too. He doesn't just rely on people taking one swing at him that he can dodge and make him look silly. So because of that, I like your angle on the fight to end inside the distance. I think most of the finishing upside belongs to Kavanaugh, though. And since I like Kavanaugh at minus 200, you like the fight to end inside the distance at around plus 200, you said?
Yeah, 255.
255. Kavanaugh to win by a finish is plus 400. Also a very talented grappler, judo black belt, can go for finishes on the ground. Hasn't shown a ton of that in the UFC because the matchup has not required it. It's been guys that he can outstrike or has outstriked. Took Felipe Dos Santos down 4 times, but didn't, no official sub attempts, didn't really look for it on the ground. So combining both those thoughts, I like Kavanaugh to get the finish at plus 400, but he has 61% striking defense. Charles Johnson isn't going to be the one to force the grappling here. I don't really see how Johnson gets the finish, which is why I'm on both Kavanaugh's side and the Kavanaugh finish. Last thing, he has Chinese heritage. He's half Chinese, half Irish. Going to be the popular man here, to your point earlier about judging. He probably gets any close rounds.
I got one best bet and one final bet to give out before, as I said, we'll turn our attention to the Road to UFC card. Zhao Long against Su Yang Yu in the bantamweight division. I projected Long about minus 133. You can get him at plus 105 currently. 2 inches taller, 5-inch reach advantage. Lost the split in his debut. Followed that up with a KO of Quang Li in a fight where everybody was betting Kong Li, because he performed well in his debut against Chris Gutierrez on short notice. Natural spot of a guy coming back. Everybody bets him because he overperformed in his debut. Got knocked out by Zhao Long. Su Yang Yu beat AJ Cunningham, is a minus 600 favorite. That tells us absolutely nothing. Now, Yu is going to be the guy grappling here. He's going to be proactively grappling. He did land takedowns on Road to UFC. He only lands them at about a 30% clip. And Long has shown that while he will give up takedowns, he will never stop scrambling out from bottom and looking to get up. And once he gets up, he's going to land damage and put a pace on his opponent. So yes, I expect him to get taken down. I think you can potentially live bet him after the first round. If he loses the first round, I expect him to land more damage the longer the fight goes and potentially to find a finish late. So Long plus 105 to minus 120, live after round one, and then his knockout prop as well at plus 800. I make that closer to, I believe, plus 600. You can also play, and I was thinking about this too, potentially a same game parlay if you could find them. As I said last week with the Cannonier fight, the Cannonier MVP fight, bet you to get a takedown and bet Long to win the fight. A little reverse correlation here, I think could potentially, I mean, you're probably going to get like 2.5 takedowns. I'm not sure what the prop is for you, but the over on his takedowns with Long to also win the fight, Long over significant strikes. I think there could be a little bit of a reverse correlation there in terms of how the fight plays out. Billy, I've got one more fight. It's the first fight on the card I want to discuss, but I want to give you some space to talk about Long and Su Yang Yu, and if you have any betting thoughts here.
Yeah, I actually like the under 2.5 in that. I think it is a pretty binary fight. I'm with you 100% on Zhao Long ability to finish the fight with strikes. I think if Su Yang Yu can get him in a bad spot on the ground or hold him down, pretty good shot at getting a submission. Didn't actually finish any of his fights with submissions on the road to the UFC or against AJ Cunningham. Logged a lot of attempts, though. You know, he's going for submissions a lot. He's trying. I don't know what Zhao's grappling defense is like against higher level opposition, just because we haven't seen him do it much. Most of the road to the UFC fights, not most, many of the road to the UFC fights are kind of like Muay Thai with little gloves on, because these are just from countries that have deep roots in the striking martial arts. So I think it's a pretty binary fight. The under 2.5 is plus 230 in that one. And I'm sure the divisional averages on a finish are, you know, around even money. So cutting off the last 2.5 minutes, you could also play fight doesn't go to the decision for a worse price. Either of those is how I'd be playing it.
First fight on the card, Uran Sadibaldiev against DR Nurzagai, light heavyweight division. DR missed weight against Brenton Ribeiro for his UFC debut, which we rarely see at light heavyweight. And then he lost as a minus 400 favorite via Kimura in round 2. He seemed like he gassed out in that fight. Sadibaldiev lost a decision up at heavyweight in his UFC debut, short notice decision. Now he's moving back down to light heavyweight. He's 2 inches taller. He has a 5-inch reach advantage. I projected his money line at minus 180, would bet him up to minus 160. Billy, did you have an angle that you like for this fight? And am I on the wrong side in terms of the favorite?
No, I'm actually with you. I think the prices came down pretty heavily throughout the week versus what it was earlier in the week, which feels like an opportunity to get a better price on Sadibaldiev. It's also just very hard to evaluate either of these guys because they both effectively fought heavyweight fights in their debut. They both lost against lower level competition. I don't think either of these guys are great. I thought Nurzagai relied really heavily on his athleticism to just overwhelm people before fighting other people who are also good athletes, like Brenton Ribeiro, who's not a great fighter but is a good athlete. So I think I'm with you, but I don't have strong feelings.
Going to turn our attention to the Road to UFC event on Friday morning at 6 a.m. Eastern. If you are listening or watching this show and those fights have already taken place, feel free to skip, as this will be the remainder of the program. Billy's got a few bets that he likes in terms of the prelims, and then we'll discuss the two actual UFC fights later on in the card. Billy, your two bets. The first is Dom Marfan. He's from Australia. He's going against Jaehyun Park from South Korea. What did you bet Fan at? And what do you like it down to?
Dom Marfan, best nickname on the weekend is Street Buddha. I have no idea how you get that nickname or what it means, but he's Street Buddha, which I love. I got him at plus 114, slight plus money. I would take him at any plus money. He's a really good grappler, good top game. In his last fight on the road to the UFC quarterfinals, because this is the semifinals, got 8 minutes of control time and 2 takedowns. Both of his losses in his career are to Quillen Salkild, who's now 2-0 in the UFC and won his fight on the Contender Series. Why they ran it back after Salkild finished him the first time, I have no idea. Dom Marfan has beat everyone else he has fought. He's taken on Park Jae-hoon. He's a Korean Zombie protege. He fights kind of like Korean Zombie, but he doesn't have the chin, which is a really bad combination of things for me to say back to back, because he does a lot of these South Korean fighters. They throw really heavy. They come forward in the pocket.
Name two attributes that have no business being said together. That is a horrible combination. Continue. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's exactly. So he just looks bad when he gets hurt. He hasn't been knocked out too many times, but he's been dropped. It just kind of looks wobbly. You can't do that. And he got taken down 17 times in one of his road to the UFC fights. And now he's fighting a grappler, and the grappler is plus money. So Dom Marfan absolutely could get knocked out. He is the worst striker. When I watched some of his regional tape, they kept going on about how improved his striking was, which tells me that his striking used to be even worser than it looked when I saw it. But I think when you've got such a clear advantage as a plus money fighter, that's a pretty easy one. Then my other one is actually the reason I even asked to move this podcast so I could talk about this event. And that is Aaron Tauzimup Tau. One of my favorite fighters on last season of the Contender Series, lost a close decision to Elijah Smith. In my notes on the Contender Series, I said that Aaron Tau looks way too big to be fighting bantamweight, had some experience at featherweight. He's making 125 now. The guy, he's built like a smaller version of Alexander Volkanovski, another Anzac fighter, moved to New Zealand. He's Maori originally, moved to Australia, came back to New Zealand to train at City Kickboxing. Has all the skills, looks really good. Struggled against the taller, longer Elijah Smith, but took Smith to a decision, and Smith is good. We just saw him get that huge slam knockout. Aaron Tau, somewhere between minus 170 and minus 180. It's bouncing around. I'd play him to about minus 200. Don't know a ton about his opponents. I'm trying to look up even the notes I made here. That's not really the point, though. I just think he's a much more talented, much better athlete than Shuai Yin. Black Panther, not Black Rooster. Again, don't know much about him, but he's going to get overwhelmed by Tau. So, yeah, that's the reason I wanted to move this one, just so I could talk more Aaron Tau. I picked him as a big underdog over Elijah Smith, which didn't work out, but he fought him close, and that has aged extremely well in the interim.
Yeah, I love that fight that Tau had against Elijah Smith. I bet that with you. Smith just had that violent Rampage Jackson-esque slam knockout, as you said. I mean, he's proven to be an elite athlete, and I thought Tau was super impressive on Contender Series. Expected him to get invited back to Contender Series instead of having to fight through a tournament to get a UFC contract. Maybe the UFC thought this was an easier path for him, fighting against fighters from this region instead of another potential challenger from, the USA or Europe or something like that. But yeah, I'll be joining you on Aaron Tau if I can. Not too many domestic books offering prices on these, not DWCS bouts, but Road to UFC bouts. Go ahead, Bill.
No, I'm just saying DraftKings has them up now. They came up late.
Yeah.
So that might be the only one right now.
For me in New York, they just added a DWCS tab too. They haven't had them really very much either. Like it's difficult to find, but in the same respect, same game parlays, they were the first one to put them out. And now like other books have started to add the functionality too. So I'm not sure if it's something they have to apply for individually. And that's why it's staggering out slowly, but it seems like there's at least one book where you can get money down on these Road to UFC fights. And there are 2 UFC fights, as I said, 2 actual UFC fights on this card. One is a flyweight bout between Niam Jargal, Art of Knockout, Tumen Dembrell, and Terrence Wrong Turn Saturn. He's making his UFC debut. He was fighting on Uriah Faber's promotion. I don't really know much about him. Tumen Dembro lost the split in his UFC debut against Carlos Hernandez as a plus 150 underdog. So we're able to do tape for this fight, Billy. Unfortunately, I don't have as many data points as I would need to in order to have a definitive take on this fight because it is around a pick 'em price. So what did you see in this matchup? And I'd imagine you didn't land on a bet here.
I did not land on a bet just because I couldn't find any tape on Saturn, especially against competition that I was comfortable with. And then losing the split decision to Carlos Hernandez, a little disappointing. I remember being high on Tumen Dembro coming into that fight, but Carlos Hernandez splitty does not do a lot for me there. So passed on that one. But we do have a fun main event. You have a bet in on that. I think if you made the bet when you put it in the sheet, you already have some closing line value on Bruna Brazil against Shang Ming, the doctor.
Yeah, she should be a huge favorite here. She's moving down from flyweight to strawweight. So we'll see how that weight cut goes, but she's going to be 4 inches taller, have a 5.5-inch reach advantage. This is her second training camp with Fighting Nerds. And she is a very popular underdog. She's a doctor, I believe. She won multiple times as an underdog on Road to UFC, including winning a UFC contract in a fight where she was losing 20-18 on 2 of the 3 scorecards via head kick knockout in the 3rd round against a much taller and longer opponent. So can she land another head kick knockout here? Maybe. But she's up against it otherwise, just because Brazil is an actual well-rounded UFC fighter, not a Road to UFC prospect. So she's taking a step up in competition against the fighter who is moving down in weight and is much more skilled. I would imagine the market is just heavily public to the she side of things at plus money. I think Brazil should be closer to minus 400, and I would probably bet her to win inside the distance if it was available to me. Unfortunately, I can't find any props for this fight as of yet, but did you kind of have the same read here? And what are your thoughts on Brazil moving down in weight? Because 125 to 115 is a lot different than moving from 155 to 145.
Yeah, I mean, proportionally, right? It's, 4 more percent of your total body weight or whatever. I actually covered this one in my luck rating with the exact same, pretty much word for word what you said. Also, a little bit concerning that it's been like 9 months since Ming Shi fought, probably because she's busy being like an actual medical doctor instead of...
She's a productive member of society.
Right.
Fighting in a cage.
She's not out partying with Carlos Prates between training sessions or whatever, which is, great for her, and I'm happy for her, and it's a great story. She said in the cage after a knockout, "Nobody tell my parents because they think I'm studying right now," which is the funniest thing to say after winning a head kick knockout in the UFC. But yeah, I mean, this is a different level. Bruna Brazil is going to look 3 weight classes bigger. Ming Shi had some fights at 105, I believe, well before coming into the UFC affiliated stuff that doesn't do that. Should be a 105er. It should be like a 95er if such a division existed anywhere, but it doesn't. So yeah, Bruna Brazil should be a big favorite. Lines gotten kind of blown out. I said in my luck ratings, like as soon as these lines come up, jump on Brazil. It's now minus 360. I think it was like minus 300 or something like that when they first dropped. So already going that way. It is the correct side. Yeah.
That'll do it for our UFC betting preview for this week. You can find more UFC content for both Billy and myself on actionnetwork.com. And if you'd like to tail some of the bets that we discussed on today's show, look for the quick slip links both in the podcast and the video description, or visit actionnetwork.com/betnow. Don't forget to download the free award-winning Action Network app and sign up for Action Pro for immediate access to expert picks and analysis. Best of all luck with all your bets this weekend. Thank you for listening. But I should say, if you're looking for us on the audio feed next weekend, we will not be there. This is the final audio episode of the 2025 MMA season. We're going to be moving to YouTube full-time for the remainder of the year. So make sure to check us out and support us on the Action Network's YouTube channel. Like, subscribe, do all that good stuff, and leave us some comments so you know that we want you want the content to keep coming. But make sure to find us there. The show will keep going. It just will not be on the audio feed. So we look forward to seeing you back there in a couple of weeks for another card. Best of luck with all your bets this weekend, and thank you for following along all year.